Guten Morgen, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Die Sitzung ist eröffnet. Wir beginnen mit...
The sitting is opened and begin with our agenda, and this is the European Citizens Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. Now, the first speaker for this morning is for the relevant committee, was the Committee for Consumer Protection in the Single Market, Ms. Cavazzini.
Yeah, dear colleagues, when you buy, let's say, a toaster and it breaks, you often can't repair it. Spare parts are not available, manuals are not accessible, and necessary updates, software updates are not provided. And the result, consumers are faced to throw away a product that they could have easily been using longer. And that is so annoying, and a lot of citizens complain to us. And I'm so proud that we found a legislative solution to it, the right to repair, which obliges producers to repair their own products, and that gives consumers several tools to repair their purchases themselves. But this logic of extending the lifetime of physical products doesn't apply to video games. And this is the core of the European Citizens Initiative we are talking about today. When you buy a video game that is connected to the publisher online, you actually purchase a license for using it. A license defined by the publisher that potentially can end at any time for any reason. Just that you're not aware of it. And if the publisher then disconnects a video game after notification, not only the support ends, it is literally dead and non-repairable for you, no longer playable for the consumer. So over 1.2 million Europeans demand us to put an end to this forced and untimely death of video games. And I congratulate all the citizens who were so active and also the organizers of this great European Citizens Initiative. As the Internal Market Committee, we are working hard to ban a practice from the single market that forces consumers to buy new products to the detriment of their wallets and the planet, planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is defined as the deliberate design of a product with an artificially limited useful life. And this logic also needs to apply to video games in EU consumer law. And I sincerely hope and urge the European Commission to come up with a solution on how the specific situation of a licensing model can ensure the same level of consumer protection for gamers. A solution to avoid the unknown, arbitrary end of the gaming fun and a long life to what has long become a part of our culture. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Für den Rechtsausschuss erteile ich nun das...
Thank you. For the Juri Committee, Mr. Kyuchyuk.
Madam President, dear Commissioner, honourable colleagues, on 16th of April, Juri and IMCO, in association with PETI, held a joint public hearing on the European Citizens Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. We had a constructive and forward-looking discussion. We drew on the expertise of the organisers of this initiative, who are dedicated in mobilising to shape the EU's legislative agenda. Video games are not just entertainment. They are art, innovation, and a vital part of our cultural landscape. Our public hearing allowed us to explore how EU law can better balance the protection of intellectual property with the rights of consumers and creators, and how digital ownership can evolve to reflect the realities of a fast-changing industry. The Stop Destroying Video Games initiative, backed by nearly 1.3 million citizens, highlights a real problem. Users lose access to games they have paid for, sometimes even without a warning. Thus, stronger protection for consumer rights is needed in a sector. The initiative calls for publishers who sell or license video games to ensure that video games actually are functional and playable for a longer period, with no remote shutdowns unless they first provide consumers viable means to continue playing. But we must also recognize that publishers, especially small startups, depend on sustainable business models to keep creating. They often struggle with rising costs, fragmenting markets, and piracy risks. So how do we fix this fairly. Several priorities emerged from our hearing with solutions that take all elements into account. First, fair access to players, coupled with stronger transparency and information obligations for consumers. Second, protection for publishers. Third, clear rules for preservation and achieving solutions. Fourth, a level playing field. Colleagues, this is all about trust. Trust in European creative industry, driving jobs and culture, but also trust in consumer rights that actually work. Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. Now for the Committee on Petitions, Mr. Rzońca, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Committee of Petition, I would like to thank the organizers of the European Citizen Initiative Stop Destroying Video Games for presenting this initiative to Parliament. Citizens can participate directly in the European democratic process, contribute to the European legislative debate and call on the Commission to consider taking action in areas falling within the competences of the European Union. The collection of more than 1 million verified signatures across several member states demonstrates the strong engagement of European citizens on these issues. From the perspective of the Committee of Petition, this initiative reflects concern increasingly raised by European citizens regarding digital products and consumer rights, particularly in situations where legally purchased video games become partially or completely unavailable following the shutdown of servers or the termination in online support by publishers. The organizers are calling on the European Commission to examine whether EU legislation should provide safeguards ensuring that video games remain functional even after the end of their commercial life cycle, without imposing an obligation on publishers to provide unlimited technical support. This debate goes beyond the video games sector itself. It concerns consumer protection, transparency and citizen trust in the EU digital single market. The Committee of Petition encourages the European Commission to respond to this expectation by considering concrete measures, including where appropriate legislative initiative aimed at strengthening consumer rights in the digital environment. This initiative provides an opportunity to constructive dialogue between consumers, developers, publishers and regulation in order to develop proportionate solutions that ensure both innovation and a high level of consumer protection throughout the European Union. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Nun erhält
Thank you very much. And now for the Commission, Commissioner Tzitzikostas.
Madam President, honourable members, I would like to begin by congratulating everyone who organised and supported this initiative. European citizens' initiatives allow people to put the issues they care about directly on the European agenda. Within 1 year, the ECI obtained nearly 1.3 million validated statements of support from EU citizens and reached required thresholds in a remarkable 24 member states. This is the 14th successful ECI, and successful ECIs have triggered public debate and a number of actions across our Union. Most of you are familiar, of course, with this initiative that we discussed this morning. Let me summarize in just a few words. Video games are a leading creative industry. Its revenues are estimated at 170 billion euros globally and around 22 billion in EU alone. This makes the video game industry worth 7 times the music industry, for example. Playing video games is a regular pastime for 3 in every 4 European citizens. The issue at stake in this ECI is the changing nature of video games. Increasingly, they work as services relying on the game publisher's support. The publishers can, and as the experience shows, do stop supporting their games. This prevents the players from playing them further, even though they may have already paid for them. And this is a complex issue with several implications. Beyond the EU copyright law and consumer rights, it is also about our digital heritage and the sustainable evolution of digital business models. The ECI organizers presented their initiative to Executive Vice President Virkkunen, Commissioner McGrath, and to Commission services in February this year. The European Parliament heard the ECI organizers on April 16. The Commission has taken good note of these positions and everything that was said. And we're now examining the ECI and preparing our reply. We are not yet in a position to issue detailed comments on this initiative. Nevertheless, I would like to highlight the importance of fair and transparent conditions. As European consumers, gamers should be entitled to enjoy the digital services that they have paid for, as provided in their contract and in accordance with their reasonable expectations. We also agree that the European video games industry stands to gain from innovating and adapting business models in a way that meets consumer expectations. At the same time, we must highlight the complexity of the issue at stake. As part of our assessment, we will also examine how existing rules apply and whether they would require further clarifications. So I trust that this debate will address the various facets of the problem and further develop some of the arguments put forward at the 16th of April hearing in the European Parliament. The Commission will then finalise its reply in the form of a communication to be presented before the summer. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you today, and I will convey your views to Executive Vice President Virkkunen and Commissioner McGrath.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kommissar. Für die EVP.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now for the EPP, Mr. Arias Echeverria.
Señora Presidente, muchas gracias. Madam President, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kostas. Almost 1.3 million Europeans have signed this European Citizens Initiative, Stop Killing Video Games. This is not just a marginal or symbolic movement. This is a movement of consumers, developers and citizens who have been facing this problem in different ways. So I'd like to congratulate those who promoted this initiative, and we have to listen to their message. The European video game industry is an innovative, creative industry of strategic importance for Europe. We must therefore protect it and ensure that it's not exposed to disproportionate or abusive practice regarding either the businesses or consumers. We're aware of the fact that there are technical difficulties, costs and challenges in terms of international property, cybersecurity or the maintenance of infrastructure. For these reasons, Europe has to act in a balanced way via dialogue with legal certainty. We shouldn't be imposing additional burdens or unnecessary obligations, so we have to look for proportionate solutions which will enable us to avoid the fact that video games become suddenly obsolete without viable alternatives for the users. Commissioner McGrath from the European Commission has maintained contacts with those promoting the initiative. We welcome that. In his proposal, which we've just heard about, he focuses on one key question. European legislation is already sufficient if it's the question is it sufficient if properly applied, or do we need to develop a new legislative framework? That's the main focus, I think. We have to listen carefully, then act in a proportionate way. Europe has already led consumer protection in the digital world. We should do this once again for this, to ensure we have an innovative, strong and competitive industry. As a result, we call on the European Commission to continue its work, seeking balanced solutions in consultation with all the stakeholders. The European People's Party and the European Parliament have already been in contact with the promoters of this initiative, and we would, of course, be delighted to work with the Commission in an effort to find balanced, effective solutions serving the interests both of consumers and the European video games industry. Maintaining access to video games is also part of maintaining our culture and our digital heritage in Europe.
Thank you for the S&D. Ms. Gómez López, please.
Gracias.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to congratulate the people for bringing forward the European Citizens Initiative. This is a tool which allows Europeans to be listened to, but also to allow Europeans to propose debates such as this one. This is an initiative that has over 1 million signatures, and so therefore it shows that there is a real concern in relation to rights in the digital economy. We have the video game sector, which is a huge economic sector, and millions of people are involved in it, not only as by way of means of entertainment, but also as a creative industry. That's why we need to be concerned and look at how certain businesses use unfair, opaque licenses. They shut down video games remotely, which consumers had already paid for, and so people can't continue to use them. Now, the S&D, we believe that this needs to change, and Commissioner, we like to see a revision of intellectual property rules, and this should be done in relation to the directive on copyright in the single market. I'd also like to speak about protection of minors. This is something that needs to be addressed in the future Digital Fairness Act. We need to ensure there are limits for abusive activity, and also needs to be impact assessments on games which are targeted at young children. Our cultural heritage is important in the digital sector, and we need to make sure that young people are at the heart of this debate. Thank you very much. Thank you for the ECR. Mr. Müller, please.
Szanowni Państwo, I don't think anyone in this chamber doubts the fact that we should protect consumer rights, and the European Citizens Initiative on video games is the great example of how citizens can genuinely try to shape their legislation in Europe. Now, the problem of access to games that have been bought is a real problem. When servers are arbitrarily turned off, then consumers lose access to digital assets that they've honestly paid for. And that's something that strikes at faith in or trust in the single market. That's why I would like to express my support to the gamers who are working towards regulation in the digital world. We support this initiative, but at the same time, I would just like to say we need to be cautious not to over-regulate the market. The games market in Europe still needs to be able to develop so that the European sector can continue to grow. So I call on the Commission to be open to this initiative, but to be pragmatic in their approach so that we don't end up with over-regulation, and so that our games market can continue to develop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for Renew, Mr. Minchev.
Thank you very much, Madam President, dear Mr. Commissioner, dear colleagues. Firstly, let me congratulate the organizers on collecting 1.3 million signatures. That shows that this issue matters to European citizens. Today, a video can easily cost over €70 or more. Imagine paying for a game only for the publisher to switch it off forever in a couple of months after that. No access, no ownership, gone. Most people would call that unfair. And this is not only about consumer rights. Video games are also about culture. They build communities, develop creativity, develop skills,
and form part of Europe's digital cultural heritage. When you buy a book or a board game, you don't expect it to disappear overnight. Why should we accept that in the digital world? And we know that technical solutions exist. Some games continue working even after official support ends. It's about keeping games playable, about responsibility towards consumers. They deserve transparency and legal certainty. This is why the Commission should look for a balanced solution for consumers, publishers and game developers and address this gap in the upcoming Digital Fairness Act. Thank you.
Vielen Dank für die
Thank you very much. And now for the Greens, Ms. Gregorová.
Dear colleagues, nearly 1.3 million Europeans signed the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative. They deserve our serious engagement and they deserve it in good faith. Let me be clear about what this initiative asks. When a company ends support for a game that people have already bought and paid for, it must leave that game in a working state, rather than reaching into our devices and switching it off. It does not ask for free servers forever. It does not ask for endless updates. It asks that what we paid for cannot be deliberately destroyed. So I am happy to hear from you, Commissioner. You take it seriously. However, at the last 3 public hearings, Mr. Abamonte, on behalf of Commission, repeated the arguments of a handful of the largest publishers, almost word for word, that always online is simply a technical necessity, that this is really a copyright question, that consumer rights must somehow be removed for consumer safety. Dear Commission, these arguments do not reflect how games actually work, and they do not reflect what these citizens are asking for. Players have kept Counter-Strike and Minecraft running on their servers for over a decade, which means that the only thing standing between a paid-for game and its destruction is not technology, it is a business decision. If the Commission really would believe these arguments, then buying isn't owning. And piracy isn't stealing. And as a pirate, last time I checked, you disagreed with those statements. Thank you.
Vielen Dank für die
Thank you very much. For the left, Ms. Shaibi, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, Commissioner, just imagine on Sunday evening you want to spend the evening at home, you sit down in favour of your favourite film, which you've purchased, and suddenly the screen goes blank. The film has been deactivated remotely because it's no longer profitable. This would be unthinkable for films, but this is exactly what's happening to video games, Concord and many others. Players have paid for these, and suddenly, overnight, they disappear. No explanation, no compensation. Theatre, graphics, music, graphic artists, composers, scenarios. All of those artists who've spent thousands and thousands of hours of creativity and passion have seen their work go up in a puff of smoke. This is part of our cultural heritage, which is being deleted. With the Stop Killing Video Games initiative, more than 1 million European citizens have been asking for something quite straightforward to stop this happening. They are proposing this without any cost for publishers. So, for example, maintaining the online mode means that players could keep playing the games themselves. You could set up a public library so as to ensure that abandoned games could still be played by those who love them. Colleagues, Commissioner, we have a choice to make today. Defend players and creators of video games while defending our cultural heritage, or allowing publishers' profits to make the law. So I think time has come for us to act.
Thank you very much. For the ESN, Mr. Ulrich, please.
Wokeness and aggressive monetization is destroying video games. You wanted to talk about what's destroying video games here in the European Parliament. All right, I will say it loud. One thing that is definitely destroying video games is the crazy woke ideology and political correctness which is being forced into the games. For example, if we want to play as a samurai, obviously we want to play as a Japanese warrior and not to be forced to play as a black person warrior or female warrior as it happened recently in Assassin's Creed. Or to play as a queer character without any other choice. This is an issue, really, for players. The other thing which is destroying video games are aggressive monetization practices, never-ending microtransaction, insane pay-to-win, or even gambling loot boxes, like in casinos. These practices has to be stopped, as well as practice when a company shut down a game server right after you purchase your favorite game. I, as a computer game player, stand fully with the other players. We want fair game and we don't want to be cheated.
Damit endet die Runde.
And that is the end of the round for the political groups. And now I'll hold people to their allotted time. Next speaker is Ms. Walsman, please.
Frau Präsidentin.
President, colleagues, the European Citizens Initiative, Stop Destroying Initiative, asks a key question in relation to the digital industry. When a consumer has a digital product, be it a video game or any other a software update, does the consumer have the right to use this product for a long time? Or is the use of this product just the privilege of the developer and therefore they can change it as such? Now, the answer from European citizens is absolutely clear. It's that people have paid and therefore they need to be able to use the products that they've paid for. There's no end time for something you've purchased. It's a question of protecting people's property and fairness in the digital world. So therefore, unfortunately, voluntary programs from the industry are not enough. So I call on the Commission to put forward a legislative proposal which will allow people to use their digital products for as long as they want. This is specifically in relation to video games. And then together we can build fair rules to stop these problems, and we can protect and make sustainable the rights of European consumers, and we can also avoid any legal issues. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Scheuring-Wielgus.
President, Commissioner, I'm speaking today not just in my capacity as an MEP, but also the mother of 3 sons. And whether I like it or not, they are growing up in the games world. Now, games is more than industry. It's part of our cultural heritage. It's stories, pictures, created by thousands of creators and artists who create this sector. Games are a medium that allow young people to learn about other cultures and history, and sometimes they're more engaging than other forms of education. So we should consider games as a cultural good, protect them, and not just allow them to disappear because of market-based or technology-based decisions. We have to protect, the treaties mean we have to protect consumers, and that means not just for temporary services, games should be permanent. Consumers should be allowed to own what they have bought, and that's why I support this initiative.
Thank you very much. Now the next speaker is Mr. Kyuchyuk.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the arguments of gamers who make a living from video games and invest tens, hundreds, and perhaps even thousands of hours in them. On the other hand, I am a conservative politician who respects private enterprise, the free choice to provide goods and services, and publishers' copyrights. I think it is appropriate to discuss whether all companies selling video games in the EU actually provide sufficient advance notice regarding the activation of video games. The gaming industry in Europe is one of the most globally competitive. We have top-notch developers and great and successful games, many of them even from the Czech Republic. We should therefore focus above all on ensuring that the gaming industry has the best possible conditions for its future development.
By colleague Gregorová, please. 93. No, 57.
Děkuji moc, zeptám se v češtině.
Thank you very much. I understand that you are a conservative politician, and that's why you protect private property. So if you buy something, then it's yours.
So why don't you respect the same thing in case of the video games? I believe that I do not buy a house or something physical, only a license for playing a game. And that's why I want rules that will be clear both for the producers and also for the purchasers of the licenses.
Nächstes erhält das Wort die Kollegin Niwuru.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Nimurku.
Thank you, Commissioner and President. These games tell stories and they are part of our culture. There are millions of people who play these games. It's more than just entertainment. It creates friendship across countries and languages. It brings people and cultures together. It creates a community, and these are the values we celebrate in Europe. But today, these games can just disappear overnight. A server may be closed down, and then the games are gone. This isn't fair or proper. Gamers should not be left without anything. We need to keep these games alive, long beyond to ensure that they are protected. We need to listen to representatives of the sector and protect culture. We need to ensure greater fairness for the gamers. When someone buys a game, they should be able to have the opportunity to play that game for as long as they wish. Let's promote this initiative. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Danke sehr. Als nächstes erhält das Wort die
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Ohizalu.
Chair, Commissioner, colleagues, I love video games. I've been collecting them since I was a little girl. All the memories, the friendships, winning and losing together. And here's the thing, I can still play those games, those old console games from the 90s, but many newer ones, gone. Not because they broke, but because a publisher decided to shut down a server. Sometimes without even telling the players. We're talking about an industry bigger than movies. Esports draws more viewers than traditional sports right now. This is real culture, and it is being deleted. If you buy something, shouldn't you then own it? That's the idea behind the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative, supported by over 1.3 million Europeans. And we're not asking for everything. We cannot place the entire financial burden of preservation on developers, of course, especially on the smaller ones. But at the very least, games should be allowed to survive when their servers don't. That's not radical, that's the bare minimum, and I hope the Commission will follow the initiative.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält nun der Kollege Sibni.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Sibniewski.
Thank you very much. I support the initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. I'm a player myself, but unfortunately I'd have less time for that now because of work. But my children have plenty of time and they play too. And that's very good. If they play in moderation, they're learning creativity and they're discovering this taste of success and learning how to lose. And so it's a good preparation for the real world. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, imagine if a car manufacturer suddenly turned the engine off in our car that we'd bought. We wouldn't be able to drive it. We could get in, but we wouldn't be able to drive it around. In the game sector, that's what is happening. Publishers are blocking products that we've already bought. It's a violation of consumer rights, and we should change that. Cutting off access to games that people have paid an awful lot of money for in the past. Now, we're not suggesting that servers be financed forever, but rather they can be hosted privately. And so I support this initiative. Thank you very much.
Nächster Redner ist der Kollege Geisel.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Geisel.
President, Commissioner, and colleagues, let's get one thing clear. I'm not one of the 41 million Germans who play video games on a regular basis, but nevertheless, I do support this initiative. if you purchase a license for a video game, you clearly understand that you can play that game for as long as you want. If you buy a book, then you don't expect the publisher to come around your house and take it back off your bookshelf a couple of years later. With the producers and developers can decide freely when they switch their servers off, then the reality of this, that it's the consumer, the customer, who's taking on the risk for the economic success or failure of this video game. And that's not in line with the basic understanding of ownership. So we need to know that gamers are aware of what they're doing when they purchase a video game. Thank you very much.
Nächster Redner ist der Kollege Warburg.
Thank you, Mr. Warburg.
Madam President, Commissioner, dear colleagues, almost 1.3 million people across Europe have signed this initiative. And I think that's a signal we need to take seriously. But taking it seriously also means that we have to ask the right questions. And the right question is not only how do we protect consumers, and don't take me wrong, because that is one of the important questions, but the right question is also how do we build a stronger European game industry? Because right now, Europe is competing against giants in the US and in Asia. And if we respond to this initiative with unworkable solution, we do not help consumers, we help our competitors. Video games are complex, creative works built on licensed content, online infrastructure, and third-party arrangements. Forcing companies to keep games running indefinitely or hand over the server code might be a solution, but it's not the simple solution in every situation. In many cases, it is technically or financially impossible and legally problematic. And it would hit the smaller companies and studios hardest. What we should do instead is three things. Better transparency for consumers upfront, fair notice before the games goes offline, and thirdly, a better condition for European developers to grow, compete, and keep gamers engaged. Thank you.
Dear colleague Warbon, there is a green card by colleague Vieira. Do you accept it? Yes. A green card, I'm sorry, a blue card.
We love green cards.
Yes, she's from the Greens, okay. So a blue card from a Green.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colleague Warborn, I can agree with a lot of what you said, but you also spoke about the importance of defending the video game industry in Europe. I can very much agree with that. But of course, when we legislate our market for our consumers, we don't just apply that legislation to European companies. We can apply to whatever companies want to operate in our market. So given that reality, would you then change your opinion or be open to making sure that consumer protection can go in hand with supporting European video game industries? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That's, I think, what I said as well. If we need to have transparency so that the consumers know what they buy, and in some cases I think that is not very clear today. But at the same time, it is a growing industry that is important for Europe, and I think without the publishers, without the developers, there will be no engagement from the consumers. So we need to have both in mind and not only one of the issues. And that's how we build a strong European gaming industry and a strong community for the users.
Dankeschön. There is a second blue card by colleague Wölken.
I had to go to my place because I left my card here. So thank you very much for your speech. I just simply have one question. What do you tell European publishers like CD Projekt Red who actively support this initiative by arguing that they don't want it? So I think there are many publishers in Europe who know that they build a community and they do not want to disappoint them, and they know that they need customers happy. So what do you tell publishers from Europe that you are not fully supporting this initiative?
I think you're absolutely right in this. And the thing is that all publishers are not the same. They have different business models, they work differently, and that's why if we do any regulation, we have to take every different companies into play. We have this think small principle in the European Union when we do our legislation, and that means that we have to cater for not least the smallest ones. And I'm afraid that if we have too hard regulation on this area, then we will not have European publishers there, and that will be at the loss, of course, of the businesses, but also of the consumers.
Dankeschön. Dann kommen wir zur nächsten Rednerin.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Mendia.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, imagine you buy an e-book and then years later you can't read it. Someone's decided to deactivate it. This is what happens today with lots of video games. Video games are part of the daily lives of millions of households around Europe. They create talent, innovation, jobs and creativity. They also create cultural heritage in Europe. Europe cannot allow this digital culture to disappear because it's no longer profitable. If you buy a video game, you have a right to know how long you will be able to use it for and what happens if this service disappears. This debate is not against innovation or the sector, it's defending transparency, consumer rights and digital heritage. So we ask the Commission to act, listening to gamers and not only the industry. The Digital Fairness Act protects consumers and we need to ensure protect the youngest against abusive practices. Video games are part of our culture and Europe has a responsibility to protect innovation and people. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält nun der Kollege von Landschot.
Thank you, Mr. van Landschot.
Thank you. As a young boy, 30 years ago, the most important decision for me was Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle. I loved playing Pokemon and wanted to be the very best. 30 years later, if I go to my mom's attic, pull out my old Game Boy and put in some new batteries, boom, Professor Oak is telling me to pick my starter. Charmander all the way. But today, too many video games will not work 30 years later. They might not even work 30 days later. Despite games being sold with no expiry date, the moment the game makers decide to shut down support, these games become unplayable. Game over, no Charmeleon. It's bad for all lovers of games, as the 1.2 million people signing this petition to stop destroying video games shows. Our laws and game industry should learn something from Charizard and evolve. Stop remote disabling and keep games playable so gamers who want to be the very best can actually catch them all. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Der nächste Redner ist der Kollege.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Wölken.
Frau Präsidentin, sehr geehrter Herr Kommissar.
Madam President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. So the disabling of products which intervenes for televisions, computers, the right to repair is also being done away with. However, this practice has been spreading to digital media in recent years. Publishers of video games are able to decide at any moment to disable access to a game which has been purchased by a consumer despite the passion, time and creativity which has been invested in those games and the fact that communities built up around them. Unfortunately, this disabling is particularly widespread if a successor title is about to replace it. So, is this practice legal? For the time being, yes, but it's completely unfair. This is why 1.3 million citizens have quite rightly called on us to act. Commissioner, I must say I'm rather disappointed by what you had to say. You say that you see the problem, but we're still lacking any suggestions as to practical action. The problem is that we seem to be seeing video games as digital service rather than a digital product that people are passionate about. So we have to say to those passionate people, we're going to ensure that you're entitled to play this game as long as you like. You paid for it after all.
Es gibt eine Blue Card.
Mr. Wölken, a blue card from Ms. Ohisolo.
54.
Seat 54.
Kiitos kollega hyvästä puheenvuorosta. Kuten tässä hyvin sanot, niin kyse todellakin on kulttuurista.
Well, you've just said clearly we're talking about a cultural product and talks about culture. Now, as Europeans, this is something we need to respect. It's a very competitive product as well. We export these products all around the world. We therefore need to find a way of addressing this issue in such a way that we can protect consumers and protect both consumers and developers. You know, this is something we could address. Do you think museums can have a role here?
Europäische Kultursektor, gerade auch durch Videogames.
The European culture sector tells us this applies to video games. We tend to forget this. Copyright law in its present form doesn't focus enough on digital reality. And we saw this in the reform of recent legislation, where we spent years talking about the need to create libraries so that users could have access to digital media, for example, e-books, which could be lent out. We saw that there isn't much understanding for digital cultural good. This applies to video games as well. And in our legislation, we have to ensure that public libraries have a role of sharing knowledge, and video games are part of that public knowledge. Thank you. Moving on to Catch the Eye, we have a series of requests to speak. I would like to ask everybody to stick to their speaking time. That will enable us to take all those who've asked to speak. The first colleague is Mr. David, and Ms. Grappini should get ready as well, please.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin. Ich werde auf. Egy hosszú nap után csak ki szeretnéd?
After a long day, if you just want to switch off and play your favorite game, suddenly you see this game is not available. Of course, you can't expect companies to keep all these games working forever, but at least they should be able to provide for the games that have been bought, that those games are functional and can be usable. And then there's another question. Once, when you buy an online game digitally, is this a loan or do you buy the game as such? Well, most of gamers agree with the second opinion, and this is clear from the European Citizens Initiative. Consumers cannot lose access to a game that they have paid for already. Therefore, we need to very urgently clarify rights and obligations. If you buy a product, you have the right to use it. It's so simple. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Das Wort erhält nun die Kollegin Grappini.
Thank you. Ms. Grappini, Mr. Sieper, you're next.
Comisar, stimați colegi.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I'd like to say the most important point. This is a very important European Citizens Initiative, and I say this with the fact that the European citizens don't use this tool enough. It's a way of European citizens proposing laws. And now we're talking about this initiative today, and I'm the Vice President of the Parliament for the single market, and we need to look at consumer protection, but we need to strike a balance. And now there's legislation which exists, but this sector of the economy doesn't fall under any of the existing laws. So, Commissioner, you need to come forward with a solution. You need to respond to this European Citizens Initiative. We talk about intellectual property, we talk about creativity, and we always say what is illegal offline is illegal online. So therefore, I fully support this initiative, and we need to come forward with some legislation.
Dankeschön. Jetzt erhält das Wort der Kollege Sieper.
The next speaker is Mr. Sieper. And the colleague Andrikaitis can get ready, please.
Europe, this is for Gressin, for Beats, for Silverbolt, for Ipoa. Because I was not only Lukas Sieper, I was Wilhelm von Bergen. Wilhelm von Bergen led men and women into battle on the fields of Mount and Blade Napoleonic Wars. He commanded up to 50 players. He trained twice every week and fought clan matches on the weekend. He edited a community newspaper, and he organized a World Cup with dozens of players, with hundreds of players from dozens of nations. And Wilhelm von Bergen existed only because Tailworlds and Flying Squirrel did not sunset the game. They turned a community mod into an official DLC. They allowed community-hosted servers. They delegated admin rights to players. They supported the modding ecosystem instead of shutting it down. Wilhelm von Bergen was lucky. I was lucky. So today I ask the Commission and my colleagues to support the ECI Stop Killing Video Games. Not only to stop killing video games, but to protect the lives that we live. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält der Kollege.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Andriukaitis. The next speaker is Ms. Vieira.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, a lot has been said, a lot of very correct, legitimate arguments. Yes, on one hand, we have an unfair practice. On the other hand, we also have the business model, because they're looking for new clients and new players, or gamers all the time. And in some cases, we can also talk about the problem of piracy. But let's not forget that there are consumer rights, there is also cultural digital heritage, and we need to find the right balance. Those are the games that have a long-term value need to be protected. Then when you're thinking about minors, you're going to carry out an impact assessment. So please pay special attention to minors, to how video games affect minors, because they're very vulnerable and they become easily addicted to video games. And as a former commissioner responsible for health, I would like to draw your attention to that problem. Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Thank you. Ms. Vieira, followed by our colleague Konecka.
Thank you very much. The Commissioner said that he understands the problem, and I'm glad to hear that, but that the Commission is not ready to present a solution quite yet. That's okay. We've waited many years for many amazing video games to come about, and we've also sometimes waited many years for great European laws to come. I just hope we don't have to wait as long as we've been waiting for GTA 6 to see a proposal from the Commission. And today we've spoken a lot about loving video games, but we also love in this House is democracy and citizens' rights to have their needs and their views and their desires expressed. And this is not just about 1.3 million signing a petition. After our committee meeting, I received dozens of emails from people saying, this is the first time I've watched the European Parliament speak, and I agree with you. I've received emails from around the world of people saying, I want to see the EU lead on this. We might have not been quoted on Le Monde or Euractiv, but we were on the Twitch streams, we were on the subreddits. We were reaching citizens where they are, and this is really what citizens care about. So I am really proud to support this initiative, and I deeply, deeply hope that the Commission will come forward with a proposal. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält nun die Kollegin Konecka.
Thank you. The next speaker, our colleague Konecka.
Děkuji, paní předsedkyně.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, the situation that you buy a product and after a time it's dead and you have not been told in advance. And it sounds like a disaster. We would hardly tolerate something like that, and yet it's the reality in the video game industry. Most video games that require a constant internet connection become completely inaccessible to players who paid for them the moment the publisher decides to shut down the servers. Even if the game has a single-player mode, it becomes inaccessible. I fully understand that when you pay for something, you want to access it, especially if you had no way of knowing that after years, months, or even weeks later, you would be denied access. I fully support the citizen initiative Stop the Destruction of Video Games, and I hope that the Commission will take a similar stance and propose ways to protect players' rights and the cultural heritage that video games represent. Video games publishers must ensure that their games remain available in some form even after the shutdown of their servers. Otherwise, they are not allowed to keep their money.
Gracias, Presidenta. Si compro un libro, nadie puede entrar.
Thank you, Madam President. If you buy a book, within 5 years later, somebody can't come to my house, take it out of my bookshelf and destroy it so nobody can read it. If somebody wants to keep a copy of a film which was important in their life, we can't accept them having that taken away. That might seem unlikely for music or films, but this happens with video games. Video games are also part of our culture, a part of our collective memory. Many people want to be able to carry on playing those games 10, 20, 30 years later, to teach their children to play or share them with future generations. More than 1.2 million citizens are not asking for the earth, they're just asking for something reasonable. That's to say, a video game which they've purchased legally not be subject to destruction and continues to be something which is useful and can be played. Games are part of our culture. This is why we have to listen to and promote this initiative to stop killing video games. We want to see a legislative response to that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Back to you now, Commissioner.
Dankeschön. Honourable members, I would like to thank you for your very valuable contributions today, which give us plenty of valuable insights to reflect on as we are developing our analysis and our response. It has highlighted the complexity of the issue, which sits at the crossroads of several public policies. So this rich exchange of views also shows how European citizens' initiatives allow people to put the issue they care about directly on the European agenda. So I wish to thank all of you, honourable members, for your interventions and for your support for the direct democratic engagement of our citizens in setting the EU's agenda. And as I said earlier, we are working to present the proposal, the communication, the soonest possible. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kommissar. Die Aussprache ist...
Thank you, Commissioner. That brings that debate to an end.